Are you a high-achieving dental entrepreneur frustrated by the gap between where you are and where you want to go? Are you tired of advisors whose advice keeps you merely surviving when you should be thriving? I'm Tim McNeely, and I believe you deserve to build true wealth so you can take even better care of the people you love, the causes you care about, and leave your dent in the universe. Welcome to the Dental Wealth Nation Show, where we hand you the keys to unlock true wealth quicker and with less effort than you ever thought. You have made an amazing choice to tune in today, because sometimes in life it can feel just a little bit lonely. And I don't know about you, but I can feel a little lonely sometimes, but isolated in my business, isolated in doing deep work, and and sometimes isolated in my own head. And that's why you have made such a powerful choice to be here. It's because by the time we finish today, you're going to know you are not alone. No matter where you are in your journey, you have access to powerful resources and niche experts tailored to your dental profession. You're going to have insights and gain some practical, actionable things that you can do from a seasoned leader in dental who has walked the path, someone who understands your challenges and your opportunities within dental. But most importantly of all, you're going to feel hopeful, encouraged, and energized about the road ahead. Look, your future is bright, and the best part is you don't have to figure it out alone. And today we have Dr. Jim Arnold, and I'm so excited about this. Jim is a dentist who started with one location and built up a thriving multi-location group. And we're going to talk about that. But what I really believe that sets Jim apart isn't just his success, it's his heart. He is a lifelong learner. He's passionate about helping fellow dentists just like you find the practice that matters and exit with purpose. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tim. I really appreciate it. That's a really nice introduction.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk with you about. There's just so many things we're going to dive into today. But for those of us who don't know you, give us a little bit of background in how you got started, right? How does someone go from one practice to a whole bunch?
Well, Tim, I came out of school and I didn't necessarily have a game plan. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do or what was going to come next, but I did know that I had a lot of student loans to pay off. So, I think like a lot of, especially new graduates now with, student loans being higher than they've ever been before, it's a little bit scary. And not really knowing the path meant that I took the first opportunity possible. And that was an associateship in a mom and pop practice back in my hometown. Never thought I'd end up back there. But you know what, Tim? It honestly could not have worked out any better at the end of the day.
Wow, amazing. So moving back home, starting just a little mom and pop practice. And when you moved into that practice, what was it like?
Well, it was interesting, Tim, because I hadn't been home, much over the previous 8 years, and got back and, not much had changed, believe it or not. But that practice itself had a senior doc who had been there for 30 plus years. Great guy, had a really good patient population, a lot of loyalty. I came in and, I guess when you didn't, since I didn't have a clear game plan, it was probably a perfect situation because it was a robust practice. A lot of patients kept us really busy. And I had an opportunity to really get to know the patients over the course of those 3 years. So after 3 years as an associate, then I bought the practice, and it worked out really well because I had some time with my wife to learn how to run a practice. You don't learn that in dental school, as you know. You don't learn how to run a business. You don't learn how to lead people or really to communicate effectively. But we spent about a year figuring those things out, watching every video we could, going to every seminar we could, listening to tapes and working with different coaches. And when we finally took over on our 1 year anniversary, by the way, we hit the ground running, and it really couldn't have worked out better, really, in those first couple of years.
So talk to me a little bit, and you may not remember, but what was kind of the mindset when you first acquired the practice? What were you thinking about? What were some of your goals in buying that practice?
We wanted to establish our own thing, develop a practice with our personality rather than just taking on the personality of the senior dentist. And we wanted to make it, I think, a little bit more I guess I don't want to say sophisticated, but we wanted it to grow consistent with our personalities, with our kind of work ethic, and with our vision for what a dental practice should look like. So, we brought in some more efficient systems. We brought in some key team players. We got a lot of education. We invested in ourselves, invested in our team, invested in the practice, so that we could provide not only better dental care, but better customer service and a better patient experience as well.
Hmm. So right, you kind of wanted to do your own thing, right? Put your stamp on it, grow the way that you wanted to grow, and through this process, was exiting anywhere on your radar?
Oh my gosh, Tim, that was the furthest thing that I could have even imagined. In the day to day grind, it's really just honestly, it kind of became a matter of survival because I said that we hit the ground running and things went really well. Well, when I say that, I mean like things went almost too well. We had such great relationships with the patients that when we started to implement systems and efficiencies and developed a team that was really good, all of a sudden I was almost busier than I wanted to be. I was that guy running all day long, seeing too many patients and feeling like I didn't have enough time with those patients. So that led us to a period where I was really burned out, and frankly it was hard for me to imagine practicing like one more year, let alone like another 20 or 30 years. So at that point, I came to the realization that something had to change. And boy, Tim, we were making so much money, more money than I ever thought I'd make as a dentist. But we had to kind of blow it up and start over and create a whole new model.
Wow. And so a whole new model. What does that look like?
Well, as I mentioned, it started out as a mom and pop practice, and we started to develop it in, I guess, more of a comprehensive care practice. But again, it was fairly low fees, and there were a lot of patients and a lot of people saying yes. So we didn't have a lot of time. I decided to go back and get some high-end education. When I say high-end, I mean, getting into like the cosmetic realm. I went through all of the Hornbrook Group courses. I went through LVI, went through the Nash Institute, some Pankey and Dawson, and a variety of other hands-on courses, so that I felt more confident providing kind of that the bigger cases, doing the bigger cases. Because I'll be honest, I saw a lot of big cases come through that had been done elsewhere that just looked terrible. But as a young dentist, I didn't necessarily feel like I was ready to do it. But after all this great training, where, Tim, I'm not kidding you and I'm not exaggerating, for about 5 years, I was dragging my team all over the country, spending $100,000 to $200,000 a year on about 300 hours of CE every year. But you know what? Through that process, we were able to slowly gain some great clinical skills, gain better communication skills and management skills, and ultimately, little by little, we transferred our practice into one that was kind of, I guess, at a little higher level, and we were doing a higher level of dental care. And that's what I really needed at that point in my career.
Oh, interesting. This is so fascinating. Actually, we got a fan coming in. We got Dickie Ball from Summit Handpiece Repair saying, "So great to
Hey,
see you on the Dental Wealth Nation show." So thanks for tuning in, Dickie. If you need some hand pieces, he's the guy for you. But
Dicky's the greatest, man. That is exactly who I'd be working with.
I'll tell you,
Definitely.
right? He lights up the room every time. In fact, the Smiles at Sea cruise, he won a Life of the Party award. So he's quite
Yes,
the
he
guy.
did. Yes, he is. And it's one thing to be really talented at what you do, which of course he is. He's got a great business, provides great service, but honestly, he's just such a great human being and such a joy to spend time with. So
Yeah.
it's good to hear
So,
from
kind of coming back to the practice and really thinking through this, right? You didn't necessarily start off with this idea or kind of any, beginning with the end in mind. And so, you've been doing this a while now. Looking back, what are some common mistakes that you made when you were working in the practice and not necessarily preparing for an exit? Would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I would. Tim, just to continue the story for a minute, though, we got to a point where we were very pleased with the model that we had developed, and we were going kind of at the pace we wanted, and the profitability that we lost when we were flying all over the country for courses. Within a few years, all of a sudden became more of a teacher, and I got to teach a lot of those things and mentor a lot of doctors, and I got to serve on a lot of like national committees and with big groups planning CE around the country, things like that. And so that was awesome. But even then, the furthest thing from my mind was any kind of a transition. It was like, man, I'm building, I'm growing, I'm doing all these cool things. I feel like I'm a part of the national dental community, and like felt great. But, honestly, Tim, if I were going to say that I made any mistakes, I did grow from one practice to two, which was a great success. And it was something that freed me up because I got a third doctor. So 3 doctors, 2 practices. I had a little more freedom, and I had a little more passive income, which was great. But I wasn't thinking about a transition, not at all. And, honestly, Tim, I think that dentists have to be thinking about that no matter where they are in their career. Because if you don't plan for the future, it's going to come up on you before you know it, and you're not going to be well prepared for it. And so, if I made any mistakes, I wish that in the process of building a multi-practice group, that I'd always been thinking about that, thinking about the value of the business, thinking about the potential exit at some point, or at least transition, and I guess get good advice about that along the way.
Yeah. No, sage advice, Jim. And it's interesting. I'm a certified exit planning advisor. And one of the
I wish I had known you then. Dang it.
Well, thank you. Well, and one of the things I do is really working on mindset, because, a lot of times doctors think, oh, exit is something I'll get to. It's in the future.
Right.
But the truth is, good exit planning leads to a better business today, because you are building those systems and those processes. And the more you focus on exit planning right here, right now, the more you're going to love your business.
Oh,
and
man.
so there's certainly, I believe, a mindset shift, that exit planning just isn't for a decade. It's for today.
You're absolutely right, Tim. And I mean, I know that's your business. That's what you do. And, 10 years ago, when I did finally make the decision to sell, having that kind of advice would have been really, really helpful, or really in the years leading up to that decision ultimately, because again, too many dentists, they wait till the last minute, and all of a sudden there's this sense of urgency. There's this sense that, oh my gosh, I want to retire next year, or, oh, I better just take the first offer I get, because who knows if I'm even going to get another offer. It's just a bad way to think about that. And anybody who talks to a professional like you gets those tools and that information necessary to not only think about that transition, but like you said, think about the here and now. Like, what do I want this practice to look like? And in that process of getting to that point, you start to enjoy what you're doing more. You have a business that's worth more, and you have a great representative to help you discern not only between different offers, but between different partners, to make sure that you not only get the best deal, but you end up in the best situation overall.
Well, and even kind of coming back to that, right? The practice you're running, I loved what you're talking about in terms of just kind of doing some of that CE with the team, and traveling and going to destinations. And we're gonna talk about some luxury dental retreats here in a moment. But talk to me a little bit about that culture you were creating in the office around CE, around education, because you can get CE online, but you chose to do something else.
You know what? I'm a firm believer that in-person CE is, at least for me, it's the best way that I learn. And it's also, when you have a team, it's a great way to, get to know them and to spend some time outside of the office. I think that investing in yourself, investing in your team, investing in your practice, those are the best things you can ever invest in, because those are things that are going to benefit you directly. And there's things that you have some semblance of control over and knowledge about. So in my case, yeah, that's what we did. And Tim, as I mentioned, as a student, I took thousands of hours of CE. And then as an educator, mentor, I provided thousands of hours of CE. But through that process, for myself and my team, the best experiences ever, the ones that were most transformative and valuable, were those smaller group experiences. There's something to be said for the big 1,000 dentist conference, and being in a big room with 300 people or 50 people or whatever. It's great, and there's going to be value there as long as you have great speakers and things are well run. but it's hard to get one-on-one time with the speakers. It's hard to address your particular situation in a room that size. And so thinking back on all the cool things that I did in the education space, I realized that those small groups, like maybe 8 to maybe 15 at most people, those are the opportunities to go deep, to really get into the nuts and bolts of what makes a practice successful, what makes a life successful, like what tricks, what tips, what shortcuts could I take to get to the level of success of my mentors? And so now in providing luxury dental retreats, we're doing exactly that. We're curating small groups of attendees to come and get world-class education with some of those niche experts that you mentioned earlier when you were introducing the show. I'm all about that. I've got so many really good friends who have been friends, have been mentors, have been educators for 10, 15, 20 years. And those are the people who I am teaching with. So so far, it's been a real joy.
Yeah. Well, I love you kind of pressing into that CE because, I read a whole bunch. I'm always learning. I'm always studying things, but I find there's no replacement for one-on-one conversations with other experts in a room together, right? That whole mastermind model, right? There's something special that happens, right? Even my AIs that I built don't even come close. And so, it's really powerful when you start working with other humans on the things that are in your practice.
That's absolutely true. And when you're talking about a smaller group like that, the education becomes very conversational. Like a luxury retreat, we're talking about having, maybe 10 of us in a room together where we're 5-10 feet apart. And, whoever's providing the education, has a format and is going through it. It's not going to be a PowerPoint and, something they're reading off of a screen saying, hey, this is how it is. This is what's going on. And I can say, hey, wait, but in my situation, and then when we take those conversations into lunch or into our afternoon excursion or over dinner, you've got 72 to 120 hours of direct access. And I think that access, that proximity is power, as Tony Robbins likes to say. I think that's where a lot of value lies for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And did you find that kind of going to these retreats with your team and spending time in that hands-on education was that helpful to keep you going in the practice? Also, did it help combat some things like burnout and just that overall dread that can just kind of show up with the practice?
Yeah, I think a whole bunch of things come into play there. I mean, one, I think, as you said, I think in the introduction, a lot of times dentists start to feel isolated. They feel lonely. They feel like they're on an island. I mean, they could be in a group practice and still feel alone in a lot of different ways. But when you get out of your office, when you get out of your state, sometimes even out of the country, and experience something like this, it can kind of get you out of that rut, and it can help you see that there are other people dealing with the same challenges you are dealing with and have overcome some of those same challenges, and to have those real conversations. For me, they were always the things that got me out of that, because even I, who did all this education, I feel like I ran some really great practices, did some really good dentistry, Tim, there were times where I just kind of get in a routine and I get bored and I needed inspiration. And so going to an event is where I got that inspiration. And I was always very careful to surround myself or spend time with people who doing the things that I wanted to do, at a high level, because I knew that would rub off on me directly just through conversation, but also just in terms of the vibe and the energy and the enthusiasm. And I always came back to the office, whether it was just me or with my team. I always felt that extra surge, that extra motivation, and with that little extra knowledge I got as well, I always really performed better.
Wow. You've been listening to the Dental Wealth Nation show. We're talking with Dr. Jim Arnold just about the power of community and mentorship. And we're diving deep into education and the role of exit planning and really thinking about, what does that future you want? And when we get back here in a moment, we're going to dive into some leadership and team building.
You're listening to the Dental Wealth Nation show, where we give you the keys to building true wealth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with the friends you care about. Ready to level up? Grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Dental Wealth Nation, and unlock the secrets of building true wealth today.
Jim, building a practice and managing a team, that takes just a little bit of leadership skills. And, you've mentioned leadership being one of your favorite topics. And when you think about leadership, right, I know everyone kind of has a different definition, but when you think about leadership, how do you define leadership?
Wow. That's a great question. And, going back to dental school, most of us don't learn a lot about it. Or if we do, it kind of gets pushed aside because we're so focused on learning how to cut a tooth, or to make this or build that. So becoming a leader, it doesn't come naturally to everybody, but I think it is a learned skill. Like you can figure it out if you get good mentors. And in my case, I really think that it starts with self-awareness. Like, just knowing how you impact people when you walk in the room, knowing how your energy impacts your team and patients and that sort of thing. Because let's be honest, a dental office is a place that can have some pretty high emotions. You've got patients who have anxiety, are really watching and listening to everything. And that anxiety can either elevate or de-escalate depending on the whole vibe of the office. So that self-awareness is important. I think that empathy in this case, meaning knowing how to communicate with people with different personalities, whether it's a patient who you're trying to like relax and calm and create a trustful relationship, whether it's your team who they all have different personalities, and you have to have the right touch with each of them to make sure that they feel good, they feel safe, they feel empowered, they feel important. And then really you've got to have a clear vision. You got to know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, your team sure as heck isn't going to know. And then once you have that clear vision, you got to be able to communicate that vision to your team. But I just said the word team. You got to have a good team. You could have all the skills in the world and still not be successful as a dentist if your team doesn't share that same vision and they don't have the kind of attitude, work ethic, and heart to do the things that need to be done for that to happen. And so it comes down to you got to hire as well as possible. And these days it's harder than ever, I think, to recruit and retain really good talent. So that means that your culture is more important now than it's ever been. But if you can start with the good people, you're not hiring a resume, you're hiring a personality and a work ethic and a heart for service that fit within, the parameters of your vision and your team context. And then you give them the tools that they need to succeed. You put them in positions to succeed, then you nurture their growth and you stand back and watch them work magic. And for me, that is a strategy that worked really well for a long time.
There is so much there that we could unpack. I mean, my head is just exploding with everything you just shared. So right, when you kind of think about leadership, right, if there's one principle that really changed the way you practiced, or is there one leadership concept that you would really mentor doctors in and say, like we could talk about everything, but if you just grasp this one thing, is there that leadership principle that you find really is a powerful mover for a practice?
I think for me, it's not all about me. It's got to be about my team, and they've got to feel that. I think that empowering them to make decisions is something that was really good for us. And sometimes it's little stuff. We had a kind of a fun thing we did. If a patient was out to lunch or out to dinner or anywhere in public and they saw one of our patients in the restaurant, if they wanted to buy their lunch or buy their dinner, they knew they could do that, and I would reimburse them the next week. And, it was just kind of a fun thing we developed. I don't even remember why or how it came up, but somebody did it. And the first time it was such a huge deal. The patient was blown away. They told everybody about it. And the team, you can imagine how they felt. They felt like $1 million being able to do something like that. And I tell you what, if it cost us $1,000 in a month, I guarantee you that paid off 100-fold, just in terms of the enthusiasm and the buzz in the community and just those, those little feel-good moments. But those are opportunities to empower your team and let them make decisions. And my team was at a point where any decision under $1,000, they could just make it on their own. They didn't have to, they could come to me, but they didn't have to because I trusted them. And it worked really, really well.
Wow. That is such a brilliant, simple, easy idea, right? Just empowering your team to make decisions, right? How much better would your office be if your team actually felt empowered? Absolutely amazing.
It makes all the difference in the world. And it means it also becomes a place that people want to work. If there's a shortage of people, if it's hard to find a hygienist, well, it's a lot better to be in that situation if you have 6 hygienists who you already know want to come work with you when something opens up. And you can only do that if you create that kind of an environment where everybody like really wants to be there and stays long term.
Yeah. Well, now doing all those things, it can take just a little bit of time for you to implement these things in your practice, for you to think differently about it, for you to work on being a leader. And dentistry, it can be all consuming at times. And so
Yeah.
how do you find that balance between, really business success and finding time to be a leader, finding a time to invest in your team versus the clinical side and to have a meaningful life in the process too? What have you learned in that balance piece?
Yeah, balance is the hardest thing I think for all of us. Anybody who is driven and a business owner and takes it really seriously, it's time consuming. There's no question about it. But I think that the best thing that you can do to create that kind of balance and create that kind of freedom is what we were just talking about. Is through leadership. Developing a great team, a team that you don't just delegate to. You're not just passing tasks off because you don't want to do it. You're delegating to them and trusting them to do a great job because of the tools that you've helped them acquire, whether you taught them or you got them the education, whatever it is, that they're going to do it well and you can trust them. So being able to delegate and trust, I think, is super important, which can't happen without great leadership and empowering the team. But once you do that, you also have to do a couple other things. One, you've got to block off time. Like you got to have specific time for whatever is important to you. If you've got a family, man, you better block off a certain amount of time every day, every week that you're spending with them that you cannot violate with something else. If you don't have a family and you love to golf, you got to have that golf time like every week. Whatever is important to you to create that balance has to be worked into your schedule. It can't be an afterthought because I guarantee you, if it's an afterthought, all of the business stuff, all the work stuff will fill up every waking minute of your day. And I think an important component to all of that is making sure that you're always investing in your personal growth. If you invest in personal growth, whether you're reading, whether you're going to a conference or a retreat, whatever, you gotta take time to work on yourself. Because if you don't do that, then you're never going to find any semblance of balance. And if you do, you may not have the balance that you should have, I guess I should say.
So, right, for that doctor who's listening right now, who says, Jim, like I hear what you're saying. It's all making sense. Like these retreats and being in community, I get it. It all makes sense. But I feel like I'm so stuck in the grind and I can't see a way out. Like what would you share with that doctor who's listening right now?
I would say that you're not alone. I think that we all feel that way sometimes, and maybe the majority of dentists do feel that way. And so I think that sometimes I don't want to say misery loves company. That's not the right phrase. I think that's what always comes to mind. But I think that just knowing that you're not alone, you're not the only one who feels that way. I think that's kind of the first step, and just that realization that it's okay. I'm normal. I'm not doing anything wrong, but maybe I need to get out. Maybe I have to have another avenue, where I have a chance to kind of have those conversations and feel validated and feel like other people understand. Because Tim, unless you're a dentist or married to one like you are, it's impossible to really understand the psyche behind, what we go through from day to day, the plethora of conversations and challenges that we deal with as clinicians and human beings who are trying to put people's minds at ease and manage a team and just all of the other, unique and complex skill sets that you need to have to not just be a dentist, but to be a dentist business owner. And look, nobody understands except a dentist, or again, someone perhaps married to a dentist. And so I think just having those conversations, finding your community, finding your tribe, those are the important things. And then through those conversations, you figure out the coping mechanisms. You figure out what works for other people and what that looks like for you, because there's no cookie cutter approach. We're all different. And so, you figure out a balance that's going to work, and then you just commit yourself to it.
Wow. Oh, beautiful advice, right? Realize you're not alone, and other doctors probably feel exactly the same way. And Jim, you help doctors in a variety of ways. So walk us through how you help doctors and how you do help serve them, no matter where they are in their career.
Yeah, I think that doctors all have different needs, whether you're just finishing dental school or out in your first year of practice or halfway through your career or, getting ready for a transition. I mean, all of those different stages require different, I guess, different input, different information, different touch points, different types of support. And I'm building an ecosystem right now with some incredible people. I've got a world-class advisory board. I've got a faculty that's just, I think, unmatched in the industry and adding to it on a regular basis, and programs to help support those dentists each step of the way. And that comes down to some of it's education, some of it's consulting, some of it's a mastermind. We're building a dentist-owned group. We're holding retreats where you can just kind of get away and, learn from the best in a kind of a luxurious, one-of-a-kind, kind of experience. So, I mean, that support can come in a variety of ways, but I'm really building something that will provide that support to anybody who needs it, and pick and choose what works best for you.
Okay, so we've got that support piece, and you're also supporting them through education too, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're developing a robust online platform, but then also with these luxury retreats. Like, we've got a group going to Dubai in a couple of months, where we've got 3 world-class educators and myself as the cleanup man, I'll say, because I'm pretty well versed in all of the areas. I've got niche experts who are going to talk about everything from developing a super profitable practice, developing life balance, and then figuring out how to increase the value of your practice and transition when you're ready. Steve Rasner, he's been doing it for a long time. The guy is a legend, an icon, one of the best, most dynamic speakers in the entire dental industry. He's going to be talking about how he built a $5 million fee-for-service practice in one of the hardest economic areas of New Jersey, and done it consistently year over year over year, and doing it at a high level, of course. Dr. Jeff Buski out in Granbury, Texas, has developed a practice where he works 3 days a week and personally produces over $4 million a year,
Oh my gosh.
while also creating incredible life balance. He teaches doctors how to optimize their body, mind, and spirit, and how that impacts their relationships, and then how that all impacts their practice and business as a result. And it's cool because the guy is super credible, because he's very transparent about his life experiences and the dark place he was in 10 years ago and how he came through that, and now why it's his mission to help other dentists not just get through dark periods, but to find balance in those important categories of life. And then our expert on transitions and practice valuation is Elijah Desmond. And Elijah well. He's another just really high impact, high energy, motivating guy who's had 7 successful business exits, and is now the co-founder and co-CEO of Dental Pitch Brokerage. But he's not just saying, hey, it's time to sell your practice. He's rolling up his sleeves with docs and talking about where they're at right now, and how can we increase the value of your practice? How can we increase EBITDA so that when you're ready to transition, you're in a perfect position to get the best offer possible, but also to find the best partner possible. And as I was saying before, it's never too early to start planning that process. Whether it's a year from now is almost too late. Like, you better get started before that. Or 10 years from now, it's always good to know where you're at, where you're going.
Yeah, so true. And all right, no, I love that. How can we get in touch with you and find out more?
Yeah, you know what? Your listeners are welcome to text me, 219-241-4698, or they can shoot me an email at Dr. Arnold, Dr. Arnold at smilesbyarnold.com. And I'm pretty good about getting back to people within a day or two at worst.
Okay, excellent. And kind of in closing here, right? We've talked about a whole bunch of things, and I love magic, and so I'll use a little magic wand analogy here. But right, if you could wave a magic wand and you could really transform how dentists approach their careers, what would you change for them?
Gosh, wow, that is a question I've never had before. But What would I change for them? Well, one, it'd be great if they came out of school without so much debt. I mean, that's more of a miracle than a magic trick, though. But I think when you come out of dental school, I think it's really important to find mentorship early. Find people who are doing the things that you want to do, because they're going to help you fast track your success. And it's not just from the things they did really well, but it'll be from some of the mistakes they made or some of the challenges that they overcame. And I think that anybody coming out of school, they're going to have a great education and they're going to be ready to start practicing, but there's so much more that you're going to learn after school. And the only way you can do it is by going straight to the source and talking with doctors, doing the things that you want to do. And along those lines, I would never just go with a guru and do everything they tell you to do. I think that you got to find that education from a variety of sources and a variety of people, and then pick and choose what works well for you and fits your personality.
Wow. Good sage advice once again. I love that. And, lastly, right, for that doctor who's listening, who feels once again, just a little bit stuck, what's one small but powerful step they can take right now today to really start aligning their practice to the life, so they can really align that practice and build the life that they want?
You know what? Reach out to me. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. You know what? Because I've been every place that they are. I have been there and I have done that. And I've had huge successes. I've had failures. I've had challenges. And I've had major blessings. But I understand where they're coming from. And I can have a conversation with just about anybody, figure out where they're at, and then figure out a customized approach, which may or may not involve me. It doesn't have to be me. If I don't have the answer, I know who does have the answer, and I can point just about anybody in the right direction to get what they need. If I got it, I'm happy to provide it. If I don't, or if there's a better fit, then I'm happy to help them find that too.
Wow. And I would encourage you, reach out to Jim. We started talking again on the very beginning and in the intro, talking about his heart for mentorship and for helping you. And I would encourage you, reach out to Jim. He's such a resource. And whether you work with him or not, his heart is to serve you and to mentor you, because dentistry is hard and we don't want you to be alone. And if you take just that one small little step, you're going to be a lot further away along your journey to building that amazing life of significance and taking even better care of the people you love, supporting the causes you care about, making a meaningful impact in the world. Jim, thank you for sharing so generously with us here today.
Hey, Tim, it's my pleasure. And thanks so much for having me on the show and for all that you do in the industry. You're doing great things, and keep up the good work, buddy.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to serve, and I would have never known a career in dentistry was so rewarding. And I don't even get to be the doctor. I just get to work with it. And it has transformed my life in so many ways. So
that's awesome.
Thank you for continuing to make a difference. Also,
it's my pleasure. Of course.
And we'll see you again here soon on the Dental Wealth Nation show.
That's a wrap on today's Dental Wealth Nation show. If you've loved today's insight, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share the wealth with your dental friends. I'm Tim McNeely, and remember, your amazing life of significance is just one smart decision away. Keep thriving, and catch you next time on the Dental Wealth Nation show.